Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Farm Boy Meets the World, or FBMW for short. My name is Harter, aka the Farm Boy. Today, we are joined by a man who knows how to make businesses and the people who run them go. Indeed, today we are joined by Mr. Don Blumenthal. Mr. Blumenthal is the principal of Top Line Success, LLC, a distinguished marketing and sales consultancy. He brings a wealth of executive experience, having served as the former vice president of marketing for Tyson Foods and as vice president and general manager of ConAgra Incorporated. These roles were held within the ranks of Fortune 100 companies, further attesting to his expertise. Currently, Mr. Blumenthal holds a prominent position as a faculty member at UCSB's Professional and Continuing Education Program, or PACE, and he has recently served as a consultant and career coach for SBCC's School of Extended Learning and the School to Work program, where he played a pivotal role in shaping emerging professionals and guiding startup businesses towards success. Mr. Blumenthal has experience with career and business coaching, self-branding, professional leadership, plus professional sales and marketing experience. So, Mr. Blumenthal, thank you for joining me today on Farm Boy Meets the World.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, and hopefully I can lend some actionable information to you and your viewers.
Yes, absolutely. So, before we get to some of that advice and to some of the very specific questions that I have for you, I actually just kind of wanted to get to understand your story a little bit. I read in the bio on the UCSB's website a little bit about your athletic past. That you were a D1 athlete. That's amazing. But I wanted to hear a little bit from the man himself. Kind of where were you born, and then kind of give me a little bit of a trajectory, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. I grew up in New York on Long Island, which is kind of suburbia to Manhattan. And grew up there years ago, and graduated high school at Oceanside High School, which is on the south shore of Nassau County on Long Island, obviously very close to the ocean. So it's nice to be here in Santa Barbara. I'm on the left coast, of course, now, but the right coast was pretty great too. But anyway, I grew up there, and sports was a big deal in my life. It always had been, and I guess even from a young age, what I really wanted to do in my life was to coach and to mentor. And although I've done that, and I'll tell you about that in a moment, at the college level and at the high school level with sports, I find myself now doing the same thing, but with students. Mm-hmm. And it's coaching and it's mentoring. And so it's really what my dream and my passion has always been, to kind of give back and to mentor. But anyway, after high school in Oceanside, Long Island, I went to Towson University, which is a state university in Maryland. It's in the Baltimore area, about 22,000 students there now, and played Division I lacrosse. I was, believe it or not, my degree, my undergrad degree, was in physical education and health. Mm. So you can see the trajectory from the standpoint of coaching and athletics. That's kind of what my go-to occupation was. But as time went on, things changed, which I'll get to in a moment. But anyway, I graduated Towson with a Bachelor of Science degree in Health and Physical Education, and then went on to coach as an assistant coach at another Division I program at the University of Maryland. I wasn't the head coach. I was young, and I was assistant coach there for a couple of years, which was really fantastic. It really set my career up for coaching as time went on. And as time went on, I taught school for a little bit, middle school. I guess it really wasn't called middle school back in those days, but it was middle school age students. And also, at the same time, was really trying to learn the business world. I saw that education from a pure teaching standpoint at that level, middle school, high school, was a fabulous occupation, but we're talking about the 70s now, and teaching jobs were very, very difficult to get to. We had, unfortunately, the Vietnam War and all kinds of things were going around in our country, and money was important. So I wanted to learn how I could make a little bit more money as opposed to just teaching, and maybe still teaching on the side, but also, working in the industry, if you will. My father was in the food industry. He owned, with a couple of partners, a frozen food specialty company in New York, in the Bronx, New York. And they manufactured items like hors d'oeuvres and Asian specialties, pot stickers, things like that. And I was always attracted to the food industry. Just loved it and learned a lot from him. worked with him part-time in the plant, in the field, at trade shows, etc., and really loved the whole business. Then as time went on, my dad retired, and I decided that, I'm going to pursue a career in the food industry. And I started with a company called Diamond Crystal Salt Company, a company that manufactured salt. But they had other products such as little packets of salt and pepper, little packets that you've probably seen before that go into meal kits with plasticware and things like that.
MREs. I've seen those packets in the MREs.
Okay.
I'm in the Marine Corps officer program.
Gotcha.
And we have to eat these disgusting MREs. But those packets saved my life because of the salt.
Exactly.
Throw a little bit on it makes it taste much better.
If you've ever seen the fluted packets, not just the little pillow packets, but the little fluted packets that you snap open, McDonald's used to use those for many, many years, and now they've gone to something else. That was the company, Diamond Crystal Salt Company, that manufactured those kits, meal kits that had plastic spoons and forks and salt and pepper and sugar substitute and things like that. So I worked with them for a few years, and really, it was a great experience. It really brought me face to face with what we call in the food industry operators, colleges, hospitals, and that's what I called on in the New York metropolitan area and New Jersey and parts of Philadelphia. And it was a great stepping stone for my career. It really was. I learned a lot. I had a boss who was a fantastic guy. He was a real stickler for detail and for product knowledge. And from that point on, I really understood how important it is to know your products inside and out. You can't just talk about them from a feature standpoint. You got to talk about them from a benefit standpoint or a value standpoint. So anyway, my journey started with Diamond Crystal, and as time went on, I had an opportunity to join Tyson Foods. Tyson Foods, hopefully for those of you that may be familiar with the brand, is the largest processor, marketer of animal protein. Animal protein, basically chicken, pork, beef. They are the biggest in the world. When I joined them, they were basically in just poultry and just chicken. And I started as a regional sales manager in the Southeast, living in Atlanta. They moved me to Atlanta from the Northeast, where I started, and served as a regional sales manager I had about 7 states. And, again, called on restaurants and colleges and cruise lines, et cetera, and those distributors who would service those particular operators. And after about 2.5 years or so, Tyson, like many other big companies, go through a lot of changes, a lot of organizational changes. And our division, which I'll explain about in a second, was a real growing entity for Tyson. And they felt that marketing and sales needed to be kind of separated to a degree, and having someone as a director of marketing and or a director of sales. And this was an opportunity. I had done very well in the sales aspect of it, and I was kind of pegged for the national sales manager role. But I had a thought at that time, and I said, that's great, but I'd rather go into marketing. And marketing to me is certainly a part of sales, and sales is a part of marketing, but marketing is the future, and it still is the future here today. And I said, I think it's really important to have a sales-oriented marketing person running the marketing department. If you really think about it, you have marketers up in the ivory tower creating programs and advertisements and promotions for companies, but half the time they don't really confer with the salespeople, the people that are really on the front lines, the ones that feel it every single day, the ones that are, experiencing this.
I understand what you're saying.
So with that said, I wrote up a 3-year marketing plan for Tyson. They never asked for it, but I said, I'm going to do it. And when I went for my interviews for this potential promotion, they were kind of blown away because they never saw anything like that. I said, we need to think 3 or 4 years out, and I'm your guy. I have a good, successful sales background, but I truly believe that in this day and age, sales is a big part of marketing. So to me, you can have a sales-oriented marketing person that really has lived, breathed, and experienced real sales experience. And they bought it, obviously, and they hired me as their director of marketing. And then they moved me and my family from Atlanta, Georgia, where I was a regional manager, to Fayetteville, Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas. And, this, you can tell in my New York accent, living in Arkansas was a tough one for a while there, but I got used to it. It was a beautiful area in the mountains. It was kind of a great area. But anyway, after about a year or so, I guess I did pretty well, and the company was growing leaps and bounds, and they promoted me to vice president of marketing. So I headed up marketing for one of the two big divisions of Tyson. In the food industry, we probably have more than two industries, two separate segments, if you will. But for our sake today, one is the retail environment. In other words, whatever you pick up in a supermarket and put into your cart, that's considered the consumer or retail side of things, the consumer packaged goods, et cetera. The other side of the fence is the food service industry. And the food service industry is not the consumer, obviously. It's more institutional. It's college and university feeding. It's restaurant chain feeding. It's military feeding. Everything other than what you put in your shopping cart. Food prepared away from home. Whether you eat it away from home or whether you get it like a pizza and you bring it home, that's food service.
And the latter was what? This one, that's food service.
That's correct.
And then the types of foods that you would be purchasing like at a supermarket or like pre-made packaged stuff, that is, what was that?
Yeah, that was we call the retail or the consumer side.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. So, for instance, we'll talk chicken for a second since we're talking about Tyson Foods. If you go to the supermarket and you go to the frozen food case, if you will, and you see a box of pre-cooked, breaded, spicy wings, and you put that in your shopping cart and you check out and you bring it home and you eat it, you consume it at home, that's retail, that's consumer. You're buying something from a shelf. The other side, if you go to a restaurant, let's just call it Joe's Bar and Grill, and you see wings on the menu and you order wings, you most likely have no idea in the world what brand it is. But you're getting the wings and you're consuming it right there. Or you're calling them up and saying, I want a couple of orders of wings to go, and you bring them home and you eat them at home. But that's considered food service. And that's where my expertise is. And I really saw that many years ago because, again, it's 2024, as we all know, but back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, two people in the workforce, both mom and dad became, the ladies started working. Now, of course, there's as many women, if not more women in the workforce than there are men. We saw things changing. People were on the go. And food service in today's world, if you take a dollar bill out of your billfold, out of your wallet, and just hold it up in the air, about 50, if I have this number right, I'm close, I'm sure, about 52 cents out of every dollar you and I spend on food goes to food prepared away from home. That's food service. And about 48, 49 cents is what we pick up in the supermarket or Costco or Sam's Club. That's retail. So if you could see, and that's been increasing every year since the 70s. Every year since the 70s, food service has been on the move because people are mobile today.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we've all gone to restaurants, even upscale white tablecloth restaurants, and we've seen families, even with little kids there, because mom and dad are taking their kids with them.
It's interesting is during COVID though, I'm sure a lot of these standards were completely different. I mean, the food service that industry was completely just kind of decimated for a little bit, right?
It was to a degree, yes. They certainly lost ground. You're 100% right. But if you think about it, a lot of people didn't go to the supermarket either.
Right.
Okay, they had things delivered to them. Or if they went, they would stand outside the door until they were allowed back in. And they rushed and they got whatever they need, the staples for what they needed at that moment, took them home. So food service definitely suffered. You're right. But think about all the takeout food. It changed the industry a little bit to more takeout.
Yeah, the dynamic just completely changed.
Exactly.
Yeah, I understand.
So instead of maybe going to a restaurant where people were afraid to do that and mingle with other people, they would call and have it delivered by Uber Eats or a taxi cab, or they'd even go, and as you and your listeners are probably aware of, oftentimes a restaurant would set up a little booth or a table in the front of the restaurant with bags. In other words, if your name is Joe and you ordered something, your bag would be waiting for you, and you had already paid it online. So it changes, and I guess the two words that I teach in my classes now about branding and about business is when things like the pandemic, and hopefully we'll never have a pandemic again, but we need to be prepared for those things now that we've experienced it. And you've got to do two things. One is adapt, Okay, you got to adapt. We all did as consumers because we couldn't go out or didn't want to go out or were afraid to go out, etc. And the other part of it is potentially pivoting. There's a difference. When you adapt, you kind of take what you're doing and kind of tweak it a little bit to make it a little bit more palatable. When you completely pivot, you're doing a complete turnaround. And some of these restaurants that we just mentioned, some of them completely closed their doors, but they just pivoted completely to online and/or phone call pickups.
You know, something that I saw is kind of similarly, I was reading it in my economics textbook, is it talks about when sometimes an oil refinery, for example, will something will affect the demand or maybe even the supply of oil refineries, and because they have the capabilities to start using their capital to produce something other than oil but very similar, like a byproduct, they start marketing byproducts of oil only or something like that. It sounds very similar to that pivot.
Yeah, exactly. So adapt and pivot are two really key words. But anyway, back to the career, and then we can get to some questions, I guess. Tyson was a great company to work for. I did real well with them. They're a fantastic company. But honestly speaking, I said I was raising a family at that time, and unfortunately, there are certain states in our country that education is just not as good as other states.
Yeah.
And Arkansas is a wonderful place, it really is, but education is not their forte. And with kids growing up, I wanted to make sure that they got a good education. So I was kind of chased down by another Fortune 100 company called ConAgra. ConAgra Incorporated is a huge conglomerate with, I don't even know how many brands they have today, but they have multiple brands. And those brands primarily were consumer brands, in other words, for the supermarket. Hebrew National, which is hot dogs and salamis and things, it's a big brand. Certainly in the East Coast is a brand of theirs. They've owned a lot of different meat brands and packaged goods brands and all kinds of food brands. Well, they saw the handwriting on the wall as well by saying, well, we're doing great in the consumer world, selling all of our packaged goods in the supermarkets and to club stores like Sam's and Costco. But we're missing an industry here, the food service industry. And they knew that I was kind of sort of an expert in that field, coming from a very successful, high-level company in Tyson. So they kind of made me an offer I couldn't refuse to head up their first food service division. It was a subsidiary. It became an independent operating company of ConAgra. It was called ConAgra Food Service. And so what I had to do was I had to take a look at all their portfolio, all their products. I'll give you an example of one that may have been a product of theirs back in the old days, but Mott's apple juice, Mott's applesauce is a very big brand in our country.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Well,
Well, I can't remember if it was a ConAgra brand or not, but I'm going to give you them as an example because they became a client of mine when I went into consulting. They would service the supermarket with glass jars of applesauce and juices and things like that. And in food service, because you're talking about big kitchens and places where food is prepared, glass bottles are not acceptable. You need plastic. You need something that's not going to break and, God forbid, go into food or be a problem. So I had to assess, going back to ConAgra, I had to assess all the products that they were selling to supermarkets and say, we want them in our portfolio, but there has to be some changes in packaging and/or portioning and/or flavor or sizing.
this is the sales leg of your experience coming in, knowing exactly what the demanders need.
Exactly, and you hit that on the nail on the head. Because if you think about it, how are you going to know what a food service operator like a college or a university, unless you ask them, unless you're in front of them? And that's where sales come in. Marketing doesn't make those sales calls. Sales makes those calls. And that's why sales, I've always been a proponent of sales and marketing working together as one. When I headed up this new division at ConAgra, I did not hire a director of sales and a director of marketing. I hired a director of sales and marketing. In other words, one person. And that way sales and marketing was distributed equally and fairly, and it worked out much better that way. And a lot of companies do that.
I see. So the analogy that I'm kind of drawing is the sales is kind of like the intelligence. This is the intelligence gathering mechanism for a company,
Right.
and then their marketing would be kind of quite literally the marketing, but the strategic, what we do with that intelligence, the strategy.
That's a good point, and it happens to be true. If you think about a business plan, and there are business plans out there that are so complicated, and notebooks full, and nobody really looks at them.
Yeah.
The bottom line is there's three elements to a business plan, and two of them we're talking about. First is the objective. What do you want to accomplish? What's your objective? Is it $5 more million in revenue, or is it to enter a new segment in the marketplace? The next thing is your strategy. That's where marketing comes in, developing the strategy. Then the tactics come into play. That's where sales come into play.
Yeah.
All right? So it's basically strategies, as you mentioned, and then the tactics. For instance, a strategy might be, we want to penetrate the college and university food service market. All right? That's a strategy. The tactic might be, well, how are you going to do that? Well, you make personal calls, of course, on the food and beverage directors, but you may attend a college or university food trade show, or you may come up with some sort of website devoted to the college university. So those are tactics to help you get there. So strategies and tactics, they work together. And if you think about it, they need to work together.
They have to, yeah.
Right. And again, as a marketing person, when you're developing strategies, how are you going to develop strategies if you don't have any sales experience or you don't tap into the salespeople? Okay. So anyway, that's kind of where I left off with ConAgra. I worked with them for about 5 or 6 years. We moved to St. Louis, Missouri. Schools are really good there. It's a little bit on the ethnic side, which is great. I like that diversity. I'm from New York, which is very diverse. And so St. Louis was a great place to raise kids and to get back to coaching. I coached lacrosse there at the high school level and started lacrosse in the Midwest there many years ago, and now it's a big deal. But after about 5.5 years, ConAgra decided to move all of their operating companies, and they had a bunch throughout the country, move them all to their corporate office in Omaha, Nebraska, and set up a corporate campus where all these spokes, if you will, of all these different independent operating companies would be surrounded by a research and development center, a high-level research and development center. Great idea, but I wasn't getting on the bus to move again.
Yeah.
Okay, I removed my family. We settled in St. Louis at the time, and I said to myself, it's time for me to maybe move on and get into my own business, and hence Top Line Success. And the name Top Line Success, if you think about it, people look at businesses, they say, what's the bottom line? What's the bottom line? How much money are we going to make? And that's great, and you need to make money. You need to prosper, and you need to make profit no matter what kind of business you're in. That's the ultimate goal. We all know that. But if you don't have the top line, which is sales, revenues, units, cases, volume, you're not going to get to that bottom line.
Yeah, you're basically saying a real business is, by definition, it almost goes without saying, it's to make money.
Right.
But we need to talk about the top line. How are we going to get there?
Exactly.
I get you saying.
That's exactly right. And so I said, I'm a marketing guy, but I'm a sales-oriented marketing guy. So how can I help companies, and it was primarily in the food industry because that's, my industry. How do I help them get into food service if they're just in retail? And the other part of it is, how do I help them with their top line? Through marketing strategies and tactics, et cetera, et cetera. How do I help their top line so down the road, after their expenses and their payments of utilities and cost of goods, et cetera, they will show a bottom line? Because sales is the cure for businesses. If you can sell and you can continue to make revenue, even though your expenses may be a little higher sometimes, a little lower sometimes, the end result's going to be some profit at the bottom line. So I approached it that way, and I went into my consulting business, and I called it a marketing and sales consultancy. And through a lot of the contacts I had in the industry, and I met up with a lot of people, a lot of different companies that enlisted me as services. I worked with companies like Clorox Corporation, Cadbury Schweppes North America, Nabisco, a lot of big companies. There's a lot to name over the years, whether it be projects or I was on retainer. So I served basically as an adjunct to their sales and marketing team. I wasn't just a hired gun. I was a hired gun because that's a consultant, but yet I became matter of fact, I even oftentimes had a business card with their logo. So when I made calls with salespeople, they wouldn't just look at me as a consultant, kind of a part-time guy, that I would be part of the company. And I think that was a good way to approach it. And it's interesting because when I started my business, there was an elderly gentleman who was a consultant in the food industry for many years, who I employed on several projects when I was at Tyson, when I was heading up marketing. And I actually employed him a couple of times when I was at ConAgra for some projects. And really a wise guy, I don't mean a wise guy in a bad way, like Yoda, just a wise man. And I always remember this, and maybe to your listeners, I think this is important, because giving back to me is really what it's all about. And coaching and mentoring and what have you. And I don't mean coaching per se in the athletic field. And I was living in St. Louis at the time, and I was considering going into my own business. And he lived in Arizona. And he said, hey, I'm going to Toronto, but I have to come through St. Louis and connect. How about if we meet at the airport and you could pick my brain a little bit? Because I'm not looking at you as a competitor. There's plenty of room out there for all of us. I said, that would be great. So I met with him for a couple of hours at one of the airline clubs, and we spoke, and I gained a lot of information from him. And he told me something very important, but I went the other direction. Mm-hmm. He said, when you consult, you really don't want to be so hands-on with your clients, because if you're giving them direction and you're with them, in other words, you're doing it with them, and for some reason you go off course, you're going to be blamed for this whole thing. I listened to it. I understood that a little bit. And I'll tell you in a second why I went the other direction. But anyway, we were done with our meeting, and I walked him back to his gate. And this was back in the time where there wasn't security.
I was about to say, you walked him to the gate.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Right, exactly. It wasn't the security just now.
Past the gate, yeah.
Exactly. So this was a little over 20 years ago, obviously. Yeah. So I went back to the gate, and I noticed up on the gate there it said Phoenix, Arizona. And I said to him, I thought you're going to Toronto. Mm-hmm. He said, no. He says, I came in here just for you. And someday, Don, you'll do this for somebody else. And I get chills even thinking about it. Unfortunately, this man passed away a few years ago. But he did that because he liked me. He saw something in me, and he was giving back. He was giving me this information, and he wasn't looking for payment. He paid for his own flight to and from, and he really helped me. But when I decided weeks later, after speaking to him and some other people, that I wanted to do this, I wanted to take a different approach. And it wasn't that he was wrong in his approach, that worked for him, but I like being hands-on. I like being with the people. I like riding in a car with a salesperson, making sales call, so I can kind of critique in a professional manner. Hey, listen, we just made the sales call and you did a great job, but you forgot to do this.
You know what you're describing? I've been reading this book with Yash here, and we're going to interview the person who wrote this book, actually. It's called Ultra Learning. And he describes this approach where it's basically the immediate feedback approach to learning things. And just as you said, it's very difficult sometimes to learn something when you're either doing it all theoretically in an abstract sense. And this is what PACE is all about, actually. This is exactly what PACE is all about, the program that you're involved with here. But basically, if you want to learn something, do it. If you want to, it's best to learn by doing, and then use immediate feedback after you do something. Right. Identify the mistakes, and then next time you do it, don't make that same mistake, and you by definition learned.
You're very wise. You're a wise man.
Thank you.
But you happen to be 100% right, and that's exactly why I took that tact. And I said, and in my little brochures that I used to have, it was that I kind of pegged myself as a hands-on player coach, not counseling from the tower. And what I mean by that, for those of you that may not know the sports analogy, in let's just say football.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Like I can picture, what's his name, Saban, the coach, the former coach of Alabama, Nick Saban. Thank you. I was thinking of Lou Saban, which was his dad, who used to be a coach as well.
A little bit more
right. Nick just retired, but you can see him on a big tower up there with his headphones set on, giving messages to his assistant coaches down on the ground, down on the field. And that's what a lot of those big-time coaches do. Well, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be hands-on player coach right there next to these people. So when it helped me because I developed relationships with these people too. They trusted me. I wasn't their boss. I wasn't, writing down on a pad like, this guy didn't do a good job or this lady didn't do a good job. No. I was helping them and providing feedback. I wasn't there tattletaling on what they weren't doing right. I was helping them. And I think that's really, really important. And you're 100% right when you say theory, and that is UCSB PACE's mission. I'm a marketing guy. I do not have a PhD. Many professors, if not most professors here at this university, and most have PhDs. That's right. When I came here to PACE, I met with the director of PACE, and I said, listen, you have my documents, you have my portfolio, you have my resume, all transparency, I don't have a PhD. And she said, Don, we're not looking for a PhD for this department. We want instructors that have been there, done that. Yep. And I say, great. And 5 minutes later, we made the deal, and it's almost 6 years that I'm here. So it's, if you think about it from a business perspective, you have men and women, and I know one in particular, a great guy who has helped me in my career, but he had his undergrad in business administration, undergrad. He got his master's degree, his MBA in business administration, and then went on to be an instructor at a university after he got his PhD. Never worked in the field, ever.
He should have taken a communications major or something like that. Honestly.
Yeah. So that kind of guy, again, I'm not knocking that, but that's just not my style.
Yeah,
and so that's all theory. And so what I try to blend here is certainly a little theory, but some practical. And I got to tell you, the students really like that. They really, really do that. I've got a lot of international students. I've got a lot of undergrads. I've got some postgrads. I've got some community professionals. And they want to hear it. Tell me the truth. What really happens out there when you do this and that? And that's been a part of the success. It's interesting because with PACE, about 2 years ago, I was contacted by an administrator, I'll call it on the main university here, not the PACE extension, and said, listen, we'd like to employ you, because there are some marketing courses here at PACE, some business courses, not many. This is not a school you go to get an MBA or but you can get a certificate through PACE, and that's the difference. But they do teach some courses there, and they offered me a position. And I was so flattered because, again, I don't have a PhD. They said, no, we're looking for somebody like yourself. This would be great. But the more I got into this, it's an interesting story because they said, we have 2 courses, and there'll be 2 different instructors teaching it. You'll teach one, the other instructor will teach the other. And they were telling me that the syllabus had to really be maintained almost 100%. They said about 80, 90% it's got to be maintained.
What do you mean by maintained?
What I mean by maintained is
Same syllabus?
Same syllabus, and the lessons too, the lesson plans, you can create your own lesson plans, but they have to be formatted to the syllabus.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, doesn't allow for much creativity.
Right.
Because if I'm teaching one course, and let's say you, Neo, are teaching the other course, and I have some students in my course are saying, I've got a friend that's in Mr. Neo's class, and Mr. Neo says, there's no project, there's no final exam here. You have a project and a final exam. There's conflict.
There's conflict, right?
So I understand that, totally understand it. But I thought about it. I said, that's not for me. I got to be creative. And I've got to be in charge of, if I want to change something, because I saw something that happened in the industry today and talk about it in tomorrow's class, I don't want to be bound by that. So I turned it down.
This is, what is that? What is, Yash, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. The production method. We went from Fordism into, we went from the Fordist style production methods to a different kind of production method around the 70s and 80s, where you basically, it's basically immediate feedback. You no longer do the whole making a massive, what is it called? A stock. You don't have a huge stockpile anymore and then sell it off later. It's literally, what are immediate demands now?
Right, exactly. And that was...
say it again? Just-in-time production.
Oh, JIT, yes.
Yeah.
Or just-in-time delivery, just-in-time, yes, exactly. So anyway, so I passed on that, but I was very proud that they asked me to do that. I had the opportunity. I just turned it down. I like PACE because I could be creative and I could do my own thing, if you will.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of, after ConAgra, I went to my consulting business, worked with a lot of food companies, And as time went on, as I got a little older, I was traveling quite a bit. I had a lot of clients, very high profile, and also from some startup businesses. I did a little bit of both to try to help them get off the ground. And we have family, we have grandkids in the LA area, so we wanted to kind of let's test out California, which we love. We love Santa Barbara. We're not leaving. We go to New York 2 or 3 times a year to get our fix on pizza and some other great food. But we're here, and I was teaching when I first got here. I was teaching at a small little university called Antioch University, which they have 5 branches throughout the country, and one is in Santa Barbara, one's in LA, one's in New Hampshire, one is in Seattle, and one is in Ohio, which is their corporate office. And they've got quite a history, Antioch. Antioch University, and a lot of people haven't heard of them, but Antioch University is the first university that has ever admitted women of color to the university. And the first woman of color was Martin Luther King Jr.'s wife's sister. Oh, wow. Okay? And then Martin Luther King's wife went to Antioch as well. It was all back in Yellow Springs, Ohio, back in the old days, which is Cleveland area. And then as time, very much into social justice and all that great stuff. But I guess their model just didn't work out, so they decided to divide and conquer and have little units, little universities in different parts of the country. And like I said, there's one right now in downtown Santa Barbara. So I was able to hook onto them, and I was teaching branding and teaching negotiation and other classes. And it worked out pretty well until they had a change of management. They had a new provost, a lady that I won't discuss here on this call, but she had her own mind made up about people that do not have PhDs.
FBMW does not want to make any money.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
But anyway, a very qualified woman, but we disagreed tremendously. And myself and another woman who had master's degrees, did not have a PhD, was said, hey, sorry, you got to go. And it was really disappointing. I put a lot of heart and soul into it. And it was interesting because on graduation, when they graduated a number of years ago, unfortunately, I couldn't attend because I was traveling. There was a petition by the students. And the school only had about 225 students. 207 students signed the petition to keep me and this other instructor. And it was again heartwarming and felt great, but it didn't change anything, unfortunately.
That's so funny because you see the intelligence gathering. That's the intelligence. That's the gathering. It's literally inverse. It's them saying, no, this is what we want. This is what we want.
And you know something, it's great, and I think this podcast is awesome, and your questions and your comments are great. Needs are what it's all about.
Needs.
And if you go back to sales and marketing, it's not about what you think everybody needs, it's what they need.
Exactly. That is the disconnect between marketing, unsuccessful marketing, and successful marketing. You're not creating a need, you're figuring out how best to address the needs, how to make your solution available. That's what marketing is.
Right. And you're hitting on another key word. You need to be you're a marketing guy, I'll tell you, whether you know it or not. Solutions. The first thing I ask my students, as a matter of fact, the class that I have this afternoon, it's called Business Development and Sales. The first thing I ask them on day one is, what do we sell? And there's two answers. One is, yes, you sell yourself first. I mean, we all know that. But other than that, it's not selling computers or bottles of water or notebooks or briefcases or suits or hats. We sell solutions. That's what we sell.
The greater the problem and the better solution that you have,
right,
the better business, the more effective your business is going to be at making money.
Absolutely. So if you buy in on the fact that, yeah, we sell solutions, okay, then what are the needs to get you to the answer? Right. So I always use this, a very, very easy one. We all know of UGGs. And UGGs, of course, is based right here around the corner in Goleta, California.
I don't know if this is going to change what you're going to say, but I love UGGs, all right?
Okay.
I love UGGs.
No, it's not going to change it at all. It's not going to change it at all. It's a fantastic brand, fantastic products, etc. But I use this example. You use UGGs for 2 reasons, for function and emotion, okay? The function side of it is, I want to keep my feet dry or warm.
It's cold as hell outside.
Exactly. The other side of it, and we buy things, by the way, no matter what we buy because of function and emotion. Sometimes it's just function, sometimes just emotion, but typically it's both. Uggs is a great example of both. Function, you need a pair of shoes. Your feet are cold or they're wet.
But you can just wear thick socks instead.
Exactly. The emotion part is it's a cool
It
brand.
looks nice.
It's a cool brand, and
Yeah,
people
yeah.
say, "Hey, man, where'd you get your Uggs?"
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what it's all about, and I think, from a realistic standpoint, I think universities and colleges throughout the world really need to have instructors that have kind of been there, done that, that add to the story, because storytelling is branding, is what's your story, and you go back to the pandemic, we touched on it earlier. The pandemic created a lot of things for us, good things.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is that it's no longer what we as marketers think the people need. We need to find out what they need by asking them, whether it be focus groups or direct phone calls or just talking to them in malls or whatever it might be. Finding out what their need is, then you can help them with their pain points.
I was recently reading a newsletter by this guy named Scott Galloway. Have you heard of Scott Galloway?
I have heard, but I'm not very familiar, but I have heard.
Yeah, I would definitely, whenever you have time, I would definitely consider just looking into what he has to say. I really think that he has a good head on his shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he talked about in his newsletter was how much time you can save and how effective it could be to just use polls before you start a business. If you let's just say that you're the type of person who wants to be an entrepreneur, but you don't necessarily know what to be an entrepreneur, and you just have that quote unquote entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
Do yourself a favor, and instead of guessing what people need, just issue a poll. Literally, just issue polls, and then figure out what people need. And then, if you want to be an entrepreneur, just provide that need. It's as simple as making other people, investors, realize that this is a big enough need, and that you can be the person that fulfills that need.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, investors sure they want to sure an investor is looking for kind of what's the future and all this stuff, that's kind of the idea. Investing, you want to make money back, but realistically an investor is looking for some way for the person that's going to solve the solutions so that their money can come back.
Absolutely. No, you're dead on that. I totally agree, and that's it, and we call it in marketing needs-based segmentation. Needs-based. In other words, basing all of your work and your programs, etc., on the needs.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'll end with that. We get back into some questioning if you'd like. But again, so I've been doing. I still do a little consulting work now. I don't do a lot of it, but I do. I love my teaching, and I devote a lot of time to it. And the classes I teach, I teach 3 classes, and usually two a quarter. Other than the fall, when it's really busy, I teach 3. One of them is business and personal branding, which we can get into. The other is negotiation and influence strategies, and the other one is business development and sales. The business and personal branding is a great course. I call it my signature class. And of course, we talk about iconic brands like Nike and Starbucks and Adidas and Ford Motor Company and Volkswagen. We talk about those brands and how they evolved over time, Pepsi, Coke, etc. For instance, I just found something yesterday that I didn't know, that the number 2 cola product is not Pepsi anymore. It's Dr. Pepper. They just overcame them in the last couple of days.
It's so crazy because I don't know why it's so thematic, because I've been talking to people recently about their drink preferences, and
Right.
a lot of people have been saying that.
Yep.
A lot of people have been saying Dr. Pepper.
It's always Coke, then Pepsi, and now it's Coke, Dr. Pepper / Pepsi. And percentage points were negligible, but it's about the same, which is amazing to me, just amazing. And I'll bring that up to my branding class. But the business and personal branding class is important because it's nice to know, it's fun to know that, I don't know if you knew this, but we as a community, as a society, we are subject to over 3,000 brand messages a day. Now, we may say, well, 3, what are you talking about? Well, we are. I'll give you a quick example, all right? You get up in the morning, okay, and you get up to maybe your Minolta alarm clock or your Apple phone or watch, or Seiko, that has an alarm in it, so there's a brand, okay. You get up, all right, you go to the bathroom, and you brush your teeth with Crest toothpaste or Colgate toothpaste. You may use Oral-B dental floss, maybe mouthwash, whatever it might be. You're using Lifebuoy or Ivory soap or some sort of brand of soap. So think about it, you've already passed a whole bunch already that you've had contact with different brands. You go into the kitchen and say, I need some orange juice. Maybe it's Tropicana, or maybe it's some other, Gelson's fresh orange juice, whatever it might be. You put a Pop-Tart, a Kellogg's Pop-Tart in the oven, or a bagel, or from Lender's, which is a brand of bagels, whatever. Just think about it adding up, adding up, adding up. Then you get into your Volkswagen Jetta, and you go to Starbucks, okay? And then you come to the office, and you have your Macintosh computer with an Intel, processor. And so think about that as the day goes on. So branding is really cool. It's strategic, it's psychological, it's both. The personal branding part of the class, and I've got to believe, I've never really asked this question, but I got to believe more than half the students take this course because of the personal branding aspect. And to me, personal branding is huge. And personal branding, and this is a Jeff Bezos quote, it's not a Don Blumenthal quote. Personal branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yes, that is, oh my gosh, yes, I agree with you 100%. Because quite literally, your brand is your reputation.
Absolutely.
Quite literally. So if you want to know what your brand is, ask other people what they think about you.
Exactly.
And if you have an honest person, they'll tell you, this is what I think your brand is.
Exactly. A brand is a promise. You'll see that on videos and YouTube, and a brand is a promise. But you're right, it's your reputation from a personal branding standpoint. And
this is why consistency is so important when it comes to production as well.
Absolutely. And the key word for branding, whether it be business branding or whether it be personal branding, I call it the D word. It's not Don, the D word, differentiation. How do you differentiate yourself from a personal standpoint from others? And I asked my classes early in the quarter, in the semester, okay, there's 30 of you here, and let's just say, for instance, every one of you, let's say I have an opportunity at my company for a computer programmer, all right, and every single one of you are of equal talent. Let's say your hard skills are equal. You're all great. How am I going to choose which one I'm going to choose for this job? Then it goes more to the soft skills, which is more that personal branding aspect. Are you a team player? Are you consistent, like you said? Are you trustworthy? Hard worker, teamwork, all these things that come into it. So that's where your personal brand comes in. So if you have a personal brand that stands out and you differentiate yourself from others because of those soft skills, those important soft skills, you're going to get yourself out of the clutter of the other 30 or the other 29 people that have the same skill level as you, but you said something or you do something or you're famous for something that, wow, that attracted me.
This is where those letters of recommendation come in.
Sure.
This is where when you come into a job, you have to know, for one, as you're saying, if you're gonna be your self brand, part of it has to be, as you say, your reputation. But what is the solution that you're selling to their problem?
Right.
If they have their problem isn't necessarily getting the best computer programmer, because as you just said, most people applying to that job it's just an assumption that they can computer program.
Right.
It's like, what is our next solution after that? What is the most efficient way to solve this problem? And if a person has, all of the solutions in terms of they can write well, they know how to use Excel, they also have really, really good communication skills and stuff like that. That gives them more solutions to their problems.
Absolutely. And the personal, matter of fact, I just had a project. I usually have two projects for my branding class. One is a team project with 4 or so students to a team, and I give them a brand, not a Nike or an Adidas, none of the brands that we talk about to it. Some not obscure, but some brands that are out there, but a brand. And I give them criteria, elements that I want them to include in a brand assessment. And some of those elements would be, what's the mission statement? What's the vision statement? What's the values of this company? What is the SWOT analysis? And for those that may not be familiar with the SWOT, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. In other words, put that on a template. What are the strengths of your company? What are the weaknesses? Everybody has weaknesses, so nobody should be embarrassed by it. Then the opportunities should cover, hey, I got these weaknesses. How do I overcome those weaknesses and turn them into an opportunity, maybe even a strength down the road? And then the threats might be potential pandemic, the economy, whatever it might be. Right. So they're doing a brand assessment for XYZ brand, and there's a few other elements: target marketing, segmentation, things like that. And another thing I use is called the brand equity pyramid. If you picture a pyramid, the top of the pyramid would be the brand ideal. In other words, what does your brand stand for? Okay. The next level would be the brand promise. How do you deliver on the ideal? All right. The next layer might be unique benefits. What are the unique benefits of your company? All right. And then the last rung on the ladder, if you will, the bottom one, and none of them are any more important than the other. They're all four of these aspects are important. The fourth one is ownable and recognizable assets. For example, on that one, we all know what the Coca-Cola bottle looks like. We know what a Volkswagen Beetle looks like. That's their ownable asset.
Yeah.
All right. The roar of a Harley Davidson motorcycle. Okay. That is an ownable asset to them. Okay. So we do a pyramid, and the students most of the time I have a contact for them at the company, the marketing person or the owner of the company, and they Zoom or meet with them if they're local, and they create a brand assessment.
You know what I'm starting to realize?
Yeah.
Brand is kind of just like an analytical term for the phenomenon of recognition and loyalty and solution solving.
That's good. That's a good analogy.
I
think I'll steal that one.
Yeah, of course. Do whatever you need to. That's no copyright here, guys. That sounds actually, now that the reason I came to that analogy is because of how aptly you put everything. You understand the way that businesses work so well that it gave me a perfect kind of reference point to just be like synthesize it. Okay, this is exactly what you're saying.
Right, exactly. And so that's the one project, the team project. Okay, those are actually going to be presented next Tuesday in class. Some of the brands that I've given them for this quarter is Hoka, which of course is part of the family of Uggs, owned by Deckers, the Deckers Corporation.
I love Hoka so much.
I do too. I use them all the time. Hoka is one of the brands. There's also there's a brand new professional women's soccer team in Los Angeles called Angel City Football Club. And Angel City is now in their third year. It's a very unique brand. It was created by women, run by women, and there's some men involved, but they don't run it. Okay, the women run it. They have a lot of movie stars and a lot of people, women primarily, Serena Williams, Jennifer Gardner, all kinds of Christina Aguilera. They're all investors in this business. And the team is now in their third season. They made the playoffs last year. They're having a tough time this year. They play at the Bank of Montreal Stadium in L.A., where the L.A. Football Club, the men, play. They split the stadium.
They sold more tickets, something like that, huh?
They did. They sell out every game.
People want to come see women taking power nowadays.
And it's a community-based thing. It's an amazing brand, brand. And I'm very partial to it because one of the three founders happens to be my daughter-in-law, who's a very, very, not, I won't say famous, but very, oh gosh, what's the word I'm thinking?
Well-known.
Successful, well-known venture capital woman. And her partners, the three people that form this business, the founders, is Kara, my daughter-in-law, another lady named Julie, who serves as the CEO. She's there all the time. And a woman who I think everybody on your call probably knows, Natalie Portman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The actress. Okay, and every guy I know is in love with Natalie Portman. And she is awesome. So the three of them started this business. So anyway, I can go into that for a long time, but that's one of the brands that's going to be offered this quarter. And trying to think, there's a few other brands that they have. So they do this brand assessment, teamwork. The other assignment, which was due 2 days ago, was a personal brand assessment on themselves. Some of the same aspects. What's your mission in life? What's your vision? What is your values, integrity, honesty, family, whatever it might be. Do a SWOT analysis on yourself. My strengths are so-and-so. My weaknesses are so-and-so. A weakness might be, I can't stand being in front of a crowd. I'm really afraid to be in front of a group, public speaking. Okay. Everybody has weaknesses. That's not a problem. But people become vulnerable. And the student and I am the only ones that see that. It's not broadcasted or presented, so they're very honest. But an opportunity from the weakness of not being a good public speaker or being afraid would be, very simply, take a public speaking course. Okay?
Or go out and just learn by doing it.
Learn by doing, reading self-help books on your own, things of that, looking at blogs, reading things, podcasts. Exactly. Listening to this great podcast, as well as YouTube videos. So they do this brand assessment on themselves. And I tell them, I said, I'm not grading you on creativity. Although, if you're creative, I'll probably look at it differently and maybe judge you better. I'm not going to take any points away if you're not creative. But if you are creative, it can only help you. And I'm getting photographs when they're babies. I'm getting comments from other people, like family and roommates. This is what I think of this person. This is the attribute. And it's gotten into a big deal, and it's fabulous. And I had a student, about a year and a half ago, out of the clear blue sky. I got a phone call from him about 6 months ago. He said, Don, I got to tell you something. The personal brand assessment, I interviewed with a company that I've always wanted to work for, and I showed them this personal brand assessment, the good, the bad, the ugly of myself. They hired me on the spot. Apple. He's now up in the Silicon Valley somewhere.
Look at that, yeah.
So I tell my students, this personal brand assessment is you.
Yeah. And what do you think it was about him approaching them with the personal brand assessment that they really, really enjoyed?
I don't have a specific answer because obviously I'm not on the Apple side of the fence there. But I would have to say it was more the weaknesses and the threats to their success. Not just, hey, I'm strong in this, I'm strong in that. Obviously, if you're interviewing, you should be strong enough to be able to get the interview.
Yeah.
But let me tell you about my weaknesses and the threats that may prevent me from succeeding. That's honesty. That's coming right there face to face saying, here's who I am with warts and all.
Honestly, just as you mentioned, for them, if they're going with the assumption just because you passed the first application process that you can handle the job.
Right.
Hard skill wise.
Exactly.
But they don't need any ambiguity when they're hiring someone either. Ambiguity is a risk when it comes to businesses. So when you approach them and you say, as honestly as possible, I'm bad at this. And then you even offer a little bit of a solution for that. I'm not good at, let's say I'm not good at Excel, but if you hire me, that'll be my first focus. Something like that.
No, I agree with you. You're right on the money on that.
I was going to say, I wanted to hear what you had to say about this.
Yes.
I was reading the book Ultra Learning by C.O.A.H. Young, and in the book he was talking about this prospective employee of a company that he wanted to apply to. He got denied the first time, and they told him, "Look, we are looking for someone that has these hard skills." When he was applying, he was like, he didn't realize that it was that specific that they wanted someone with those hard skills. So what did he do? He went back and he taught himself those hard skills in particular. He comes back and he said, "I solved your problem. I am the solution to this thing that I had that we exposed in my previous interview. I'm not good at this, but this is what I can be good at. I really want to work for you guys."
Right.
And then they hired him right there. They said, you solved the solution for us. Now we have literally zero reason to deny you.
That's a great ploy. It really is. There's another thing. As you're talking, I was thinking about something that I saw online, and actually I have a video of it. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he's an influencer. He's been on LinkedIn forever and ever and ever. And he had a great idea. Let's say you have a passion to do something, whatever it might be in business. His suggestion is, you want to do an internship, hopefully, paid or non-paid for the experience and the learning opportunity and what have you. But to find out who that person is, that man or that woman, who is that person that you really super respect, that you want to be like, or that you want to learn from. And you go to that person and say, listen, I'm so impressed with you. I've been following you, blah, 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 blah. I want to do an internship for you, and I'm going to pay you. I'm going to pay you for 6 months to do it. They're going to say, you're going to pay me? Think about that aspect. That's differentiation. That's being different. That's thinking out of the box big time. Chances are the other person says, well, you're not going to have to pay me. But you're saying this is so important to me that I'm willing to invest my time and my money to learn from the best. And I think you're the best, and I want to do that. I'm willing to do that. To me, if somebody said that to me and I was looking for an intern, I'd hire them in a second. And I wouldn't have them pay. Okay? Or I'd have them, to be honest with you, I may even have them pay the first week, and I'd give it right back to them.
Yeah, kind of like as a down payment type.
Yeah, something like that.
And you return it later.
Yeah, so it's important. And, it's personal branding it goes from, I get a lot of students that ask me to take a look at resumes. Okay? And resumes are important. But in selling, think about it for a second. There are 3 aspects of selling: features, advantages, benefits. We call them FAB. All right? Features might be, let's say, let's talk about a car for a second. A feature may be, hey, it comes in red, blue, and green. It has a hatchback. It comes in convertible. It comes in a sedan. It comes in 4-door. Blah blah. Those are facts. Those are facts. Those are features. The advantage part we don't talk about as much, but advantage might be your brand versus another brand. But what's really important is the B word, the benefits that are most important to the buyer. So Neo, if you come into my car dealership and I'm asking you questions, and questions are fabulous. You got to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
How you gonna know anything if you don't ask questions?
Right.
It's ridiculous. So I'm saying to you, what's important to you? Hey, I need a car that's really good on gas mileage because I travel a lot in my job. I also have a family, and I've got 2 little kids, and I want a safe car. Okay, so that's what your needs are. I'm sure you have more needs than that, but those are the 2 big needs. Why should I continue to start talking about how many colors it comes in and this? It doesn't mean anything to you. I want to talk to you and say, listen, let me tell you about this particular brand of ours within our brand. In other words, our style within our brand. Fuel efficiency gets you 36 miles a gallon on the open road. It gets you this, it's that. It's safe. It comes with Michelin tires. The safety record for Subaru, if it was a Subaru, is the best in the business. Blah blah blah. That's what's important. So think about a resume for a second. All right, you have a resume in front of you. It has your name. It has your experiences, maybe your college, university, maybe your military background, whatever it might be. It has those. To me are facts. This is what you've done and or what you're doing. Features. It's not selling anything. So I always tell my students, put something in that, not just in the cover letter, but put something in the resume that I call a value proposition, okay, or personal brand proposition, whatever you want to call it. Because when you're selling something, and let's face it, when you give somebody a resume, you're trying to sell yourself.
Yeah, that's literally what it is.
Right, you're interviewing, or you want an interview, or you want an internship, okay? If somebody looks at a resume, they want to know, okay, and what does all this mean to me? So I tell my sales class, whenever you're talking about a product, maybe it's a car, maybe it's a food product, whatever. You're talking about all the features. The product, the celery was grown in Ormond Beach, Florida, and the lettuce was in California and Fresno. Okay, that's not a big deal. It's important, but you always say when you say a feature, and this is what it means to you.
You know something? Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
What I've been realizing recently, because although I'm only a second year, I have, like most students, have the thought of applying to a master's into law school after all of this stuff. And what I've really been thinking about is what most students do is they go on and on and on about what they've done before school. But something that I really realized is what these colleges are looking for at the end of the day, obviously their job is to educate people, but what they really like is people who use that education and improve that school's reputation after. So when you're applying for a college, when I'm applying for colleges, the difference that I'm going to do is I'm not going to say, look, I'm going to say this is all the stuff I've done before, but this is what I want to do after.
Period.
So,
Exactly.
So they know that I'm going to be that one of those guys that goes and improves their reputation.
Right.
It's not just a before thing. If that college, they don't honestly give that much of a damn about what it was before. they want to see what you're doing after, because
Right.
their job is to help you get to that after.
Absolutely. So you take the resume, back to the resume,
Yeah.
you have all that stuff, you put it into the blender, you press the button, and it's like, okay, these are my experiences, I got a 4.0 GPA, great stuff. Don't get me wrong, but all features about you. What you need to find out is, and this is what it means to you, Mr. or Mrs. potential employer. That's what's really important.
This is why the cover letters are so important before when you submit something, you give them, the cover letter is kind of like that B portion.
Right.
The actual resume is the F and A, but
Right.
the cover letter is where you say, this is what it means.
Right.
And this is how I can plug into your system.
No, absolutely. And, I don't know the statistics, but from a resume standpoint, I don't think employers look at resumes more than 10, 15 seconds.
It's literally just
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Now, if a cover letter is, if they read the cover letter and they get something out of that, then hopefully they will go to your resume for a little bit more. So in the cover letter, you're 100% right. That might be a great place to say, I have all my experiences and this and that. And there's nothing wrong with even saying, I'm trying to sell myself. In sales, there's features and benefits. These are my features. Here's what it's going to benefit you.
Yep.
Okay? And I think that's important. And for that, there's also, and I'm learning too as I grow, okay?
I hope so.
There's a process called AIDA, A-I-D-A. You know, in business, we have acronyms up the yin-yang. We got acronyms for everything, okay? AIDA is an abbreviation.
Like 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Go ahead.
For attention, interest, desire, and action. And I teach about that. Again, I didn't create AIDA, but somebody did, and it's great. In email writing and or cover letters. How are you going to get their attention?
Yep.
How are you going to get them to be interested in that?
I need this because I've been reaching out to really big authors and really big public intellectuals to get on here. So
Right.
please continue. Go ahead.
Well, I'll make sure to send you some information on AIDA. And you want to get them to a desire and then an action. I am really big on call to actions. So let's say you said you're in business and you send an email to an associate. Do you want them to do something with it? Is it time sensitive? You wouldn't need that report? Whatever it might be, you want to make sure that last letter of the acronym AIDA, which is action, is, Neil, I need this report no later than 12 noon on Tuesday. Boom. You gave them the action, all right? Please respond. In other words, please respond and let me know that you received this and the timing is good for you. That way, everybody's locked and loaded here, okay? If you don't have some sort of an action step or a call to action, all you're having is a correspondence that's not going anywhere, all right? So back to your cover letter concept, where you could put some good, loaded, great information about what my background and my resume is going to do for you. If you follow that AIDA to attract their attention, and I give my students an assignment, write me, as your instructor, an email about anything in the world using AIDA. For instance, I have a Basset Hound. I have a Basset Hound dog that I'm in love with. I think I have more pictures of my Basset Hound than I have of my family. And my students know about it because I always show a picture of the long floppy ears. So one of my students was creative. And she wrote me, Dear Mr. Blumenthal, I know that you're a dog lover, blah, and had a picture of a Basset Hound on it, a photo, an action, something in there. And I read on. I know that you want to keep your dog healthy for many, many more years, blah, blah, blah. I can't remember offhand exactly, but she got my attention. And all of a sudden, desire, it was about dog food, like a healthy dog food program. But she got my attention.
This is actually, it makes me think. So one of the things that I was telling Yash here is I've been finding a pretty decent amount of success. Not a decent amount. I've been finding a good amount of success with reaching out to people that I would have never thought would have answered the emails. But one thing that I've noticed is, or one thing that I was contemplating was just adding, to set myself apart, was just adding just a title at the beginning and basically like context, like really quick introduction. My name is Neil Harter. I want to interview you. But then in the text portion, just doing a video, literally just a video where they can click on it. It's like, hey, now you know who I am, and this
Right.
isn't like some generic bullshit.
Right.
This is and it's an action item.
That's great, exactly. And I've had some students that have put like a link, hit this link for more information, or hit this link for a discount.
Because
Or what?
once you get the person to invest in the click, you already know that they have the time and the interest to continue.
Absolutely. No, perfect. So I'll send you this Ada information.
Yes,
I think it'll
that'd
help
be
you.
very helpful, yeah.
But, you know, on that same subject that you said what you're going to do or what you've done with a link or a video, which I think is very smart, very, very good. In any kind of business, and again, I know we have acronyms and we have statements and we have slogans and what have you, but any type of business, when you talk about promotions, when you talk about promoting, which is advertising and social media and all these different, promoting your brand,
Yeah.
there's only two things that matter. And that is A, create interest. I'm sorry, I take it back. I'm thinking of something else. Create awareness. Same thing. Create awareness and promote trial. That's what you want. That's what your goal of promotion, advertising, social media has to be.
Can you elaborate on promote trial?
Of course, okay. Well, let's go back first. The first thing is gain awareness. Oh, okay, hey, now I'm aware of this product. Wow, interesting. I mean, I have a little interest. Promoting trial means I think I'll buy one. You know, let me give it a try. I'm aware of it now. It makes sense. Let's say it's food. Boy, that sounds like it tastes really, really good. I'm gonna give it a try.
Yeah.
So you're making people aware of something they're not aware of, and if you make them aware of it in a way that's enticing, okay, I'll give it a try. That's what it's all about: creating awareness and promoting trial, and that's what it's all about. And that really is the same if you think about it, Neo. If you think about it from a standpoint of when you interview for a job, you want them to know who the heck you are.
Yes.
You want to promote, you want to create awareness. Hey, I'm Neil. I do this. This is my background. In ROTC with the Marines and this and that, everything you want to say. So, hey, that's interesting. And this is what he does. Well, maybe I'll give it a try. Maybe I'll hit that link and maybe I'll be somebody on the podcast or somebody.
This is kind of the function of an internship almost. Internships they kind of function to do that trial for people.
Right.
For businesses. So they can say, we have this person who's obviously capable of doing the work.
Right.
But let's have them on an internship basis first.
Right.
So that we can one, integrate them into the company, then they become integrated. But we're also not, it's quite literally a trial.
Right, it is. It's actually kind of a two-way street because the individual, him or herself, is becoming aware of this potential company,
They're assessing
and
it, yeah.
then they're giving it a try by, let's say, being an intern, and vice versa. The company's doing the same thing. So it kind of works together and what have you. So what other questions might you have for me?
So honest, I'm not even gonna be hyperbolic here. I think that we covered more than enough.
Okay.
We covered so much, and honestly, I kind of wanted to pick apart a little bit of the stuff that we were talking about already before I even get into further questions.
Sure.
So one thing that I thought was really interesting was how we were talking about, or actually, I'll phrase it like this. I think that there's a kind of a paradox that you see with companies. They start off, a really small company, they start off and they highly prioritize that information gathering. When they start off, they have to prioritize information gathering, or else they're not going to be successful because they don't know where the product is at their
Right.
They don't know what kind of product they need. But then what I noticed is as companies get larger, very, very, very large, there is still a need for the information gathering. But at that point, companies also have the ability to kind of create problems and sell the solutions themselves. And so it's interesting to me how the size of a company. I guess what I want to ask you is how does the size of a company start to affect their marketing strategies?
Well, I think it could. Hopefully, it doesn't. Companies have to grow, and a lot of companies are saying, manpower, we can't add another person or two or three, and our budgets. But you got to make an investment, risk reward kind of thing. So I think as a company gets bigger and bigger, they have to fill in the blanks. They have to grow with that. If they get bigger from a sales aspect and their revenues and they're selling more product, they really need to be able to fortify their marketing and sales department, and maybe operations as well and other departments, or research and development. Very, very important. So I think that's really an important aspect of it. But there's a phrase out there that I'm sure you're familiar with, and most people in business are, called scaling.
Yes, yeah, I've heard of that.
And scaling basically, and it's interesting because the class I'm giving this afternoon, their project is on scaling a business. And I gave them a podcast to watch on scaling.
Okay.
And if you want that, just let me know.
Yeah.
It's on Angel City Football Club. It's on that soccer team. That two of the founders, Kara and this Julie, who live in the LA area, were talking to a moderator like yourself about scaling Angel City. Scaling is growing a business kind of on steroids. People say, I got to take it easy. I want to see some incremental growth. Sorry, everybody, it's 2024. Incremental growth is not going to get you where you really want to go. I'm not saying it won't, but when you scale a business, what are the elements that you're doing to really step on the gas pedal?
Yeah.
And instead of saying, in 5 or 10 years, this business is going to be so-and-so, it's going to be a little incremental every single year. Why can't you try to make the quantum leap in 3 years or 2 years or whatever? Doesn't mean you're going to fail. Doesn't and if you have some stumbles along the way, tweak it a little bit and then back up.
I think quantum growing is good as long as you have the right data. Because if you are misinformed, then you're going to make a massive investment and possibly plummet if it's not well informed.
Yeah, you're totally right, and that's why going out and speaking to people that are going to help you make it happen is very, very important. And doing the things that you think the consumer, if it's a consumer product, wants. This podcast on Angel City is very, very interesting because what they did with all the activities and community involvement and sponsorship and giving to the LGBTQ community and to kids in the area has brought the community together and scaled up. They sell out every game. Now, if you watch a game on TV, you may not see all the seats taken, but they are sold out. It just means people didn't show up or they gave their tickets away or whatever, or they're standing somewhere. So what they've done is amazing. They are the only professional women's soccer team that's even making some money. A lot of them don't make any much money.
They're making profit.
Yeah, they're making money. They're making some money. Not big money, but profit.
That, they're going to attract more players. It's literally just a positive feedback cycle. We're going to attract better players, and then boom.
Well, to that point, very good point. They have a program that no other professional team, men or women, football, baseball, whatever, has. It's called revenue sharing with the players. Now, professional women's soccer players don't make a lot of money. All right. Now, you don't need that at the NFL because the NFL guys are making $5 million a year. Yeah. So to give them a little bit more from the gate, if you will, they'd love to have it, but you don't need to do that. Yeah. But for this, when these ladies are making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 at the most, that helps. And they also help the women go into the community and things like that. So that's one of the many ways that they've scaled their business to become what it is today in 3 years. Not even 3 years.
I understand. Okay. Time is a scarcity, but one last question.
Sure.
So I think, honestly, if our listeners are paying attention close enough, they have pulled out quite a bit of advice. But can you just give a young person like myself, a young person listening to this, it doesn't necessarily have to be business-related advice or branding advice, but what is something that you wish you would have known when you were 20 years old?
Well, I think we've covered some of it, but I guess I can kind of package it up a little bit. To me, I learned this from the first boss I ever had in the business. Having a sense of urgency. Okay? Yeah. It's really important in all walks of life. Obviously being passionate about what you really, really want to do, but having a sense of urgency and being who you are. I say this, if somebody asks you or listeners that are listening to this thing, if you ask yourself, what sets you aside from somebody else? You need to ask yourself that question. And maybe it's a good answer, maybe it's very positive, and maybe it's something that's maybe not so good. Well, maybe you can change that. What sets me aside, and I've been told this by people, is I am the same Don Blumenthal in the boardroom, on the athletic field, watching TV with my wife, sitting here with you. What you see is what you get. There's no bullshit. I'll maybe back up. I can bullshit with the best of them, but I don't lie. There's a difference.
There you go.
And so I guess my tip is to be yourself, because you know why? Everybody else is taken.
Yeah, everyone else is taken. Yeah.
So be yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror. Do assessment. Do a little bit. You can call it a brand assessment or just a personality assessment of yourself. We spend more time planning a trip. let's say you and I are buddies, we're going to go rock climbing next fall, in Yosemite. We're going to be talking about that for the next 4 or 5 months, planning we spend more time planning something like that than we do planning the next day of our life or what we really want to do. So be yourself, have a sense of urgency. That'll all become a part of your personal brand. I gave an exam yesterday, a quick example, then we can cut it. I gave an exam yesterday in my branding class, and some students were finished before other students. And I was starting to grade some of the papers there. And there was 3 or 4 students that I had already marked the paper. They got emails with their grade on that exam by the time they got back to their apartment.
Yeah.
And one of them wrote back and said, "Holy shit, Don, I've never had and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, it's who I am." She said, "Now I understand your brand." Having a sense of urgency.
There was a really funny Albanian saying, not a funny one, it's a really apt and very wise and helpful Albanian saying that goes, "Don't save today's work for tomorrow."
There you go.
Don't save today's work for tomorrow.
Right. If you can do it, I mean, before we started this little conversation, I was in my classroom and I was grading some papers. I want them, I look at people, they're my customers. My students are my customers. I want them to be satisfied. I want them to learn, of course, but I want them to be satisfied. So if I show them, this is how you do it, and show them that, hey, your papers are due by 12 noon the day before our class. Period, the end. You don't have it in, you get some points deducted. There's my expectations. If you have a problem with it, let me know, but don't let me know the night before. I'm not feeling well, I can't get my assignment when you've had 6.5 days to get it in.
Right.
Okay? Or like this, if you took an exam and you studied your tail off, you want to know what you did.
Right.
Some instructors, and I had them when I went to college, you wouldn't hear at all. Or if you did, you'd hear 2 weeks later. And
there's so many classes here at UCSB where I don't even know what I got on the final. I just know that I passed the class. Like
Right.
I may have passed it with like an A or a B. I have no idea what I got in the final.
Right.
I just assume that I did, like 80 up or something.
Yeah,
because just
yeah.
math dictates that that's how I got an A.
Right.
But other than that, I don't know.
And how many exams have you taken that maybe there was some multiple choice or fill in the blank or whatever it might be, and you got them wrong, but you have no clue what the right answer is.
Exactly. They don't even. They might not even post the answer keys anymore.
Right.
It's literally just you're in, you're out.
So what I did this morning, what I did yesterday for my branding exam, is if they have 2 or 3 questions wrong, in my email, here's what your grade was, here's how I figured out your grade, here are the 3 questions that you answered wrong, and here's the right answer for those questions.
That's great.
So I just think that's important, and that's part of that sense of urgency, of doing it right, and following up.
That is going to be the name
Okay.
of our episode today. When we post this episode, it's going to be the title is going to be "Don't Save Today's Work for Tomorrow."
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Don Blumenthal. My name is Neil Harter, aka the Farm Boy. It's been a real pleasure. It really has. Thank you so much.
The pleasure has been mine.
Yes, of course. Thank you. That'll be all, folks.